Fraud in the Workplace, presented by the Department of Children's Services. What is fraud? Fraud is an intentional deception or misrepresentation made by a person with the knowledge that the deception could result in some unauthorized benefit to himself or some other person. It includes any act that constitutes fraud under applicable federal or state law. There are two types of fraud, and those are cash fraud and non-cash fraud. Examples of cash fraud include diversion of cash receipts, billing for services not performed, ghost employees, payroll fraud, phantom vendors, false claims, forgery, misappropriation, conspiracy, alterations, breach of duty, bribery, embezzlement, extortion, skimming cash receipts, inferior or incorrect products, petty cash change and off-book funds, fiduciary funds, substitution, kickbacks, and gratuities. Examples of non-cash fraud include personal use of facilities and equipment like personal computers, cell phones, copiers, etc., identity theft or impersonation, conflict of interest or nepotism, favoritism, false reports, false statements, omissions, and the sale of confidential data. Here are some characteristics of people prone to fraudulent behavior according to the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners. They can be male or female, though male fraudsters outnumbered females 2 to 1, with 67% being male and 33% being female. They can be any age. 52% of fraudsters were between 31 and 45 years old, but older fraudsters tended to cause larger losses. They never take much leave. They don't necessarily have direct access to cash. They appear to be honest and trustworthy. They're often college educated. How fraud is revealed through personality, behavior, and opportunity. These 6 behavioral red flags have been the most common in every one of ACFE's studies dating back to 2008 with remarkable consistent distribution. Living beyond means, financial difficulties, unusually close association with a vendor or customers, control issues or an unwillingness to share duties, divorce or family problems, and a wheeler-dealer attitude. In 85% of cases, fraudsters displayed at least one behavioral red flag, and in 50% of cases, they exhibited multiple red flags. The fraud triangle is a framework designed to explain the reasoning behind a worker's decision to commit workplace fraud. The 3 stages, categorized by the effect on the individual, can be summarized as motivation, opportunity, and rationalization. Employee motivation could be that there's no chance for advancement, or financial stress, or having to do more with less. For management, the position security might depend on their performance. Attributes or policies that allow fraud to occur or decrease the probability that fraud will be disclosed or punished create opportunity. Personally created opportunities include familiarity with operations and cover-up capabilities, or a position of trust where they're on their own, close association or collusion with others, possibly a conflict of interest. Organizational opportunities include inconsistent or inadequate controls. Fraudsters may rationalize their behavior with the end justifies the means. They may get little or no recognition of achievements and think they owe me, have personal financial worries and they're just borrowing it. The minimization of the fraud, a little doesn't matter to an organization this big or everybody does it, or they may think, I'll stop when. Opportunity, motivation, and rationalization work together to create a trifecta of fraud risk. Organizational ways to minimize fraud risk. A strong culture of ethics and integrity at the top. Employees must believe that dishonest acts are not tolerated and will be punished. Adhere to policies and procedures, especially documentation and authorization. Provide proper training to employees. Provide for segregation of duties. Establish clear lines of authority. Review, and ensure physical security over assets. Ask for documentation. Ensure that one person does not have total responsibility for a process. Evaluate performance regularly. Report suspicious activity. And finally, make sure internal controls are followed. What is an internal control? Internal control is anything that you do to safeguard assets or make more efficient or effective use of these assets. Internal controls help your organization achieve its objectives. Internal controls that you perform every day include locking your desk and office when you're not there, verifying the accuracy of another staff's work, reviewing monthly financial reports, and keeping your computer passwords secret. Internal controls are important for prevention. They reduce fraud opportunities, prevent loss of funds or other resources, ensure mission accomplishment, establish standards of performance, assure compliance, preserve integrity, eliminate adverse publicity, assure public confidence, and protect you from false accusations. Possible consequences of weak internal controls include a waste of assets, inaccurate or incomplete information, a misuse of assets, or embezzlement and theft. All levels of DCS management staff are responsible for maintaining a work environment that promotes ethical and honest behavior on the part of, but not limited to, employees, vendors, contractors, consultants, and grant recipients. To do so, DCS management staff models and promotes ethical practice and communication skills for their staff and others, as indicated in the State of Tennessee Code of Conduct. DCS management staff demonstrates through words and actions that unethical behavior will not be tolerated. Administrators, directors, and managers design and implement control systems at detailed levels within their specific units and then execute those control policies and procedures. Auditors examine the adequacy and effectiveness of internal controls and make recommendations where control improvements are needed. They contribute to the effectiveness of the controls, but they're not responsible for establishing or maintaining them. They're responsible for finding material misstatements, whether from fraud or error. Auditors will almost never actually find fraud during a routine audit, but they should be alert for fraud risk factors or indicators and should make referrals for further investigation or arrange to commence a fraud examination. Policies and procedures. Your role in suspected fraud. In an ongoing effort to detect and prevent fraud, waste, and abuse, including fraud, waste, and abuse in the federal and state healthcare programs, DCS created policies and procedures and follows laws and rules established to detect and prevent fraud, waste, and abuse. They include, but are not limited to, the policies listed here. 1.5 Internal Audit, 1.7 Risk Management, 1.16 Internal Affairs Investigations, 3.32 Prohibition of Fundraising, 4.10 Conflicts of Interest, 20.3 Reporting Suspected TennCare Fraud or Fiscal Abuse, and the Whistleblower Protection Statute, Tennessee Code Annotated, Title 4, Chapter 18, Section 105. Additionally, if you suspect fraud, Policy 1.27. Any employee who becomes aware of known or suspected fraud, waste, or abuse should immediately report the incident to an appropriate departmental official and complete the online fraud, waste, and abuse report located here. Incidents should be reported to one of the following officials or offices: a supervisor or department head, DCS internal auditor or director of internal auditing, a state official, or to the Tennessee Comptroller of the Treasury's hotline for fraud, waste, and abuse at 1-800-232-5454. State law prohibits discrimination or retaliation against employees for reporting allegations of dishonest acts or cooperating with auditors conducting an investigation. Provider fiscal abuse. Fraud can include provider practices that are inconsistent with sound fiscal, business, or medical practices and result in an unnecessary cost to the Medicaid program or in reimbursement of services that are not medically necessary or that fail to meet professionally recognized standards for health care. It also includes recipient practices that result in unnecessary cost to the Medicaid TennCare Cover-TN program. Examples of cases that the Office of Inspector General investigates include unreported income or insurance, TennCare Cover-TN recipients living out of state, drug-seeking behavior, incarceration, individuals receiving bills or EOB statements for services never provided, provider billing irregularities, over or underutilization of healthcare services, and misrepresentation of credentials. Provider fraud involves not only doctors, but nursing homes, home health, durable medical equipment, pharmacies, mental health facilities, laboratories, transportation, and dentists, to name a few. TennCare fraud. Policy 1.28. Reporting suspected TennCare fraud and fiscal abuse is a requirement. The Office of Inspector General, in coordination with the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, Medicaid Fraud Control Unit, Federal Bureau of Investigation, Attorney General's Office, Department of Human Service, and many other departmental offices, have recovered millions of public health dollars. Report TennCare enrollee fraud and fiscal abuse to the State of Tennessee Office of the Inspector General, TennCare Fraud Division at 1-800-433-3982. Employees may report TennCare, Medicaid provider fraud, and fiscal abuse to the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation Medicaid Fraud Control Unit at 1-800-433-5454. No retaliation of any nature is tolerated for the reporting of fraud and abuse to this agency or to the Tennessee Office of Inspector General or TBI Medicaid Fraud Control Unit. Whistleblowers are protected by federal law. Fraud hurts people, taxpayers, kids, us. Bad things happen to fraudsters. Employer discipline, criminal fines and/or jail time, civil lawsuits, loss of trust, and loss of reputation. If you report fraud, do cooperate and secure records if possible. Do not investigate on your own or discuss with anyone other than the senior management or those investigating. You may not think fraud can happen to you, but it can. Maybe it already has. Thank you for completing this course. You may now attempt the Fraud and Waste post-test.